Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective. This is Think Design Stories. In this series, we will be going behind the scenes on one of the most iconic laptop brands ever conceived and is still going strong. Today I am joined by David Hill, who started with IBM in 1985 and was with them until May 2005 when the IBM ThinkPad division was purchased by Lenovo. Since then, David has held several positions between those two companies, including the Executive Director of Design, the Vice President of Corporate Identity and Design, and the Chief Design Officer and Vice President of Experience Design. When it comes to ThinkPads, there are few people that know more than he does. Let's go ahead and talk about the Lenovo Skylight project, which is a laptop design that very, very few people know about, but I think everybody that uses ThinkPad and pretty much almost all Lenovo laptops has benefited from indirectly in some way because of one particular thing on it that I think was first tried there, which was the keyboard. Mm-hmm. But how did Skylight, come into being? And from your perspective, what made it unique at the time?
So Skylight was really the result of a lot of work that had been done in the company to create a breakthrough product, a product that would create a new category. And so the basic root of the idea was a simple appliance-like device that wasn't burdened by complex operating systems and such. You could almost describe it as a big smartphone that had a keyboard and sort of had a little bit of laptop type quality to it, but a very rudimentary operating system. So you could send an email, get on the internet, take a picture or two, use it to make a phone call, things of that nature. And the people that I was engaged with this at the time wanted to have a design that would be new to help signal this category, creating product concept. And so like the last thing anybody wanted it to be was, a little miniature ThinkPad. And so I was asked, about this, and there was a lot of concern that, well, if you design this thing, it's going to be another ThinkPad. Of course, I tried to say, well, wait a minute now. There's a few more crayons in the box than that, but I understand, and I made the suggestion that they should hire Richard Sapper to do it. Richard was under contract as a consultant, but he didn't really have an agreement to design anything specifically. He would provide advice and counsel and suggestions and overall review of the program and make sketches of ideas and things like that. But to do a ground up, completely new product, it wasn't within the scope of his contract. So I suggested, let's hire him. And there was a lot of skepticism because a lot of the people I was talking to didn't really know much about Richard other than his association with ThinkPad. So I put together a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, showing the breadth of his work. Mm-hmm. Everything from coffee machines to bicycles and furniture, everything imaginable, clocks, wristwatches. I mean, automobiles. He worked on automobile concepts for Fiat and originally started working for Mercedes. And so I put together this big portfolio, and everybody said, well, okay, I guess he's a possibility. Maybe we should talk to him. So I said he was coming to Raleigh, and I set up a meeting with the powers that be, and we had a big discussion about this. And Richard, of course, was very interested in doing this because it was something new, and there was a financial aspect to it, obviously. And he said, what's the timeline? And the timeline that he was given and I don't recall it exactly, but it was essentially nearly impossible because we were coming right up on a holiday, and he was in the United States. He wasn't in Milan where his studio was, and there was like almost no time. And he said, "So, I'd love to design this, but it's a very short runway. And you're telling me right now I don't have permission or I don't have the job. So if I don't have the job officially, there's no contract, there's no signed agreement on this. Uh, when can I start?" And they said, "Well, you really can't start until it's an agreement. And there's going to be another meeting like in another 2 weeks or something." And he said, "Well, this is impossible. I have to have time to design something."
Hmm.
And the way the meeting left was um, people were going to figure out, well, how much time would there really be? Could they expedite the decision process? And try to figure out a way to work within this really ridiculous time frame. And the meeting was over, and Richard and I were still in my office, and he looked at me and he said, "I have an idea." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "I'll just start working on it now, and I'll show it to them when I'm done. And if they like it, they can pay me. And if they don't, they owe me nothing." I was like, "Really? You would really do this?" And he said, "Well, why not? I've got an idea. I've got sort of the germ of an idea. And if I wait for the decision makers, I'll have no time to flush it out and see if this idea really works, or is there a better idea." He said, I can't just snap my fingers and a completely new design idea slides in, on a shovel somehow, and there it is. So I thought, well, that's fascinating. And so I think he left that day to go to Boston. And actually, he was going to Gloucester. He used to go to Gloucester a lot. He owned a piece of oceanfront property there, oddly enough, that he was originally planning to build a home on, but never did. Anyway, I had a meeting, right? I asked for a meeting the next day with Peter Hortensius.
Mhm.
And I said to Peter, I said, "So Richard has an idea." He said, "Oh, what is it?" I said, "Well, he's going to start working on it." He said, "He can't do that. We don't have a contract. We don't have any." I said, "No, no, no, let me finish. He's going to just do it, and he's going to show it to you when he's done. And if you like it, you pay him for it. And if you don't, he's okay." And he looked at me and said, "Seriously?" I said, "Yeah, that's what he just said this yesterday. He's dead serious." So Peter said, "Well, why wouldn't we do it?" I said, "I don't know. I don't want to tell him to do it, or agree, to do it until you've known this. I mean, this is kind of some high stakes poker here,
Mhm.
and so if you're okay, I'm okay, and I'll tell him go ahead, and then we'll just agree on when they need to see this." And so I get the date and such, and then Richard went off to Boston and then to Gloucester. And then he called me the next day when he was in Gloucester, and he said something on the order of, "Do you have any idea what I have in my hand?" "No, I really don't, Richard. What's going on?" And he said, "I have a model of Skylight." It wasn't called the Skylight. I don't remember the code name. Whatever it was called. The
Mhm.
Skylight was the trade or the brand name that was later developed. But he said, "I have a model of it." I said, "What do you mean you have a model?" He said, "Well, I made this sketch in the hotel, and I went to this party, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to make a model of this? Because everything I do is 3D. I make a sketch and I make a model and I tweak the model, and I couldn't figure out how am I going to do this? Because I'm still going to Los Angeles. From here I'm going to Los Angeles to see my son, and then I'm going back to Milan, and this is like a week of time gone." And I said, "So, okay, so tell me more." And he said, "I met this guy at this party who's a violin maker. And I convinced him to go over to his shop the next day and he would make this thing out of wood. And so they made it out of a piece of olive wood in this guy's shop. And he sends me pictures of this wooden model. And I was like, okay, that's pretty out there. And and it was very interesting shape, a very unified shape. He wanted it to look like a shape when it was closed, one perfect shape, and then reveal what was the rest of it on the inside, which is a theme of much of his work. This idea of something being closed or finished with and then opened and it reveals itself. It's common. In fact, he used it probably first in the Hoyer microsplit stopwatch, which looks like a miniature ThinkPad. You should get one.
Down.
Write that down.
Yeah.
It's in the Museum of Modern Art. So anyway, he went to Los Angeles and then he made a drawing of this. So he lofted this old school section line drawings and he faxed it all to his assistant in Milan so they could make 3D data. So when he got to Milan, then he has 3D data and he's tweaking the 3D data with output because he tuned it and modified it and such, and got it to the point where he liked it. And then I said, it has to be painted. I mean, you can't show a raw wooden model. The CEO is going to see this thing. He's going to look at me or whoever and say, "Is it supposed to look like wood?" No. And so it was a holiday, and the guy who normally painted for him was out of the country. So he bought a spray gun, a professional automobile quality spray gun, and found some buddy of his to paint this thing. And then they put it in a little wooden box that Richard designed that kind of opened unusually, and there were two of these design models inside of this box. And then because time was so tight, they sent a Lenovo employee by airplane to Milan, who ate dinner with Richard, went back to his studio, put it in a box, and he got on a flight back. I don't even think he slept there. And we were all in the design studio like about 10 o'clock at night, waiting for the arrival of this of the courier, so to speak. And I was looking out the window. I said, I see some headlights, that car's pulling up. It's the craziest thing ever. And he comes up and he has the box and we have to unscrew something. And I've got Richard is on the phone. And it's like, 4 o'clock in the morning or something. I don't, it must be about 4 o'clock in the morning. And we opened it and he talked a little bit about it. And everybody's eyes got wide and their socks went up and down and everybody liked it. And the model was a little rough because the paint had not completely cured when it was wrapped. So it had a slight impression of bubble wrap and it looked like alligator skin. And then it had to be photographed and put into some presentations. And fortunately, my son was home on the weekend, and he was studying photography in a university, and I had him photograph this stuff and then Photoshop all the alligator skin out of it. And it was a wild ride. But the end result was tremendous in terms of its design. It was very unique, very leadership. And such. And I have one here. I don't know if this is going to work, but I can hold it up. This is the design. It's very soft form. This little chrome bumper, and then you open it, and it looks like this on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unique, and it has a feature which he was very preoccupied with, of this little arm that swings up Let me see if I can do
Right.
this. And this was originally, he wanted it to be a telephone handset so you could make a telephone call on it. But it turned into for the initial release, it was going to be a very high capacity USB key. So you could use it for transferring files and such. And this is the primary color. It's like the interior of an Asian soup bowl.
Mm.
And then he also wanted a black one, but people were a little bit negative on black because it was yet another black computer. So there was going to be two different color choices. There was going to be a silver one and a blue one. But my favorite is the red one. So
Striking.
it's unbelievable. And everybody who ever saw it thought it was fantastic. Uh, but that's kind of the genesis of where the design idea came from and how it kind of started from this nearly impossible task. And this here he made this all happen. And I don't remember, he was in his 70s when he was doing this. I mean, he was a dynamo.
Well, no kidding. I'm just thinking,
He was like all over the place on this thing, telling me these stories about making the model. And I'm in Los Angeles now, and I'm drawing this thing with a T-square on a kitchen table. Oh my God. And that's what he was doing. And
wow.
then I wrote a blog about it, very extensive blog, kind of highlighting this whole chronicle of events. And it was very, very popular. It had a tremendous number of comments and views, and it was actually syndicated worldwide as an article by some publication. I can't remember anymore. And then a university professor used it as a case study for creativity.
And
It
rightly
was
so.
it was pretty amazing. Uh, but it really hit on all of the things that Lenovo wanted. They wanted it to be new. They wanted it to be what's that kind of a thing, but also have an air of familiarity so people would know how to use it.
Hmm.
It's very svelte. It's like a thing you could put in your purse or slip in your backpack because it's all smoothie and there's no jagged edges on it. The bottom is completely smooth, the top is smooth. It's 100% gloss, like a car.
Hmm.
It's very cool, and it's black on the inside, which is a nice nod to the soup bowl, only in reverse.
Right.
The soup bowl is typically black with a red interior.
Not only a gorgeous machine, but and even though it was not necessarily released large scale, at least not in like a huge commercial way. There are a handful out there, but like this
Right.
thing has a legacy that, again, I don't think a whole lot of people are really aware of because there was one
Mhm.
particular design choice that Richard and your team made
Right.
that is pretty much on every laptop Lenovo has now.
Right. Yeah. When Richard first made the first like 3D printed models, he had sent me. I mean, I was in touch with him, 24 hours a day on this thing. But he had sent me some images, and in these images, it was a 3D printed model, and there was a drawing from a CAD drawing of some sort of a keyboard, which was just like glued to it, and it was a keyboard off of a ThinkPad. And I looked at it and I said to him, I said, Richard, I think it's a fantastic design, but I think when we put the regular old keyboard in it, it loses something because it looks like we just went to the parts shelf and got a ThinkPad keyboard. Not that that's bad, but it doesn't match the veracity of the creative work. And he said, well, I just put that on there because I had it. I don't know what the keyboard. Do you have an idea? And I said, well, I do have an idea. I have an idea to make a island style keyboard, but based off of the keycap of a ThinkPad. And so he said, explain this more. So I drew on the whiteboard a ThinkPad keycap. And a ThinkPad keycap has sort of a D shape. The bottom edge is curved, the leading edge, and it has a concavity to it. And then it has tapered sides that go down like this. I said, what I want to do is take the top surface of the key that your finger touches and turn that into the whole key and have it just go straight down. And maybe we make it just a little bit bigger so that it doesn't look too like pumpkin teeth keys that are like really far apart and such. And he said, send me a drawing. And so I had the Japan team work on this, and the team and also in North Carolina. And we made some quick 3D kind of studies of it. And he said he said, I love it. It makes sense. It's like what you touch is exactly like a ThinkPad, but it has a completely different look that is simpler and perhaps more in keeping with the rest of the design. And then we used typography on it, which was italic, just to give it one more little twist. Not that it typed in italic, but it gave it a little bit different character. And that keyboard, as you mentioned, it really turned into then it was a proving ground for this idea of making an island style keyboard that had a new feel or a new look, but a familiar feel. And that turned into the first keyboard on what was called ThinkPad Edge. And then from there, it turned into the keyboard essentially for every ThinkPad now. And more than that, it's on every Lenovo computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. But I don't know if you can see it. It's hard to see on this because it has that background. But you can see the keys.
Yeah, you can really see that the
Oh
beginning
yeah,
of that iconic shape, no
yes you
question.
can. But it's very much derived from a ThinkPad. It's not just a square key with four little round corners, which is I've just described for you essentially almost every keyboard on every laptop in the world.
Yeah.
Ours has a concavity, which I'm a big proponent of because people's fingers are curved and it
Mhm.
fits and it helps eliminate mistakes when typing. And the D shape also helps with mishits to avoid them. And so it has all of that kind of purposeful geometry built into it, but it has a different character aesthetically. So that was a big win, I think, that came out of it. It was an opportunity to explore that and try to invent something